Hi everybody. So recently Namewee came out with a video where he interviews Malay girls and what do they think about Chinese guys and how and vice versa. So and towards the end of the podcast or the vodcast or the video, he actually let the Malay ladies to ask any question they did want to ask the Chinese guys, and I believe this is more in the Malaysian context. So for me, as a Singaporean Chinese guy, I will answer in terms of the Singaporean Chinese man's perspective.
Adakah orang Chinese selesa tinggal bersama-sama dalam kelompok orang Melayu ataupun orang ras Melayu tak selesa?
So the first question is with the Chinese mind living with Malays. So I think Chinese have no problem living with the Malays. I think this has been proven throughout history that Chinese have always been able to live with the Malays. And even for me, I used to have Malay neighbors. We don't really talk much, but that we simply able to live together. And nowadays, my neighbors, my so-called minority neighbors, they are mostly Indians. We have no problem. If there's anything that culturally is different, we usually either tolerate or we just have a understanding that that's just their culture. I mean, we tolerate or we accept of some of their way of life. They will accept some of our quirks, and sometimes it's not even about different in terms of race or culture, but it's sometimes just the way how we are. Our habits are different. Even within among Chinese, we are different. So I think this question, I think Chinese wouldn't mind, but of course, people are being people. We always try to gather around people that we can identify and people we can identify with. So it's very common that the Malays want to stay with the Malays and the Chinese want to stay with the Chinese. That's pretty common, but it is possible to stay together. It just takes some adapting. I think generally that I don't think there's any issue about it.
Lelaki Cina memang tak bersunat, so I don't want to know that.
Ya, potong rambut cukup lah. Yang lain tak payah potong punya.
So this lady asked regarding circumcision. So from my understanding, circumcision is done pretty early when the Muslim guy is still a child or a baby. So they wouldn't have experienced what it's like to have no circumcision. So it's very hard for them to really understand what's the purpose of the foreskin. So there is a purpose to the foreskin because the penis itself is an internal organ, so it needs to be covered by a skin to protect it. So and the foreskin also serves another purpose, that it helps to funnel the urine so that it will not spray everywhere, so that you have a lot more control when you urine. So but of course, because it's just a skin that is protecting an organ, so once they cut it, it doesn't really have a very major health effect, but your penis will likely to be more desensitized because of lack of the protection, and then you will be wetted and as for the myth, they say that having a foreskin, no circumcision is actually more dirty, is untrue because you can always wash. So and that's that.
Okay, saya nak tahu sangat. Okay, betul ke kalau macam orang Cina, okay, macam pagi orang memang tak boleh mandi?
Huh?
Kenapa?
You will be glad to hear that we bathe a lot, like unnecessarily too much at times.
Dia macam tak nak kawan dengan Melayu. Mereka tak ada rasa minat untuk berkawan dengan Melayu.
Why do some Chinese refuse to mingle with Malays? I think the reaction by Namewee is he's probably expressing in terms of a majority kind of Chinese, majority of us. But I think there are some Chinese that are not comfortable to mingle, not just with the Malays, but with any other non-Chinese. this is probably due to the kind of like experience that they had before, maybe bad experiences they had with the Malays. Maybe they were used to be in some gangs, then they are Chinese gangs, and then they always fight with the Malay gangs. It could be all sort of possible reasons. And similarly, there are Malays that avoid mingling with non-Malay people. I heard of it. I probably seen some of it. It is not healthy. I hope people will change.
Mungkin orang ada juga pandangan kan, macam mana orang Cina boleh develop chopstick tu, kenapa 2, kenapa 3? Kenapa?
Chopstick. I think this one is really hard to answer. If you're talking about something that have been existing for centuries, if not thousands of years, I personally think that the number one reason is actually hygiene. That's the reason, because it's sensible that maybe clean water wasn't so available during those days, or water is very precious in ancient China. I'm not sure, but my gut feeling is something to do with hygiene. But in real life, we don't use chopstick that much. We actually use fork and spoon more, and we use chopstick for probably noodles, and when we eat dim sum. And we also use our hands, especially when we go to fast food restaurant, KFC, McDonald's. We use hand, and a lot of the times my family members, they actually use hand. When they eat prawn and eat drumstick. Although my personal preference is that I will always use fork and spoon, and yeah, but that's personal preference, I think.
Perayaan tu macam mana? Sebab saya teringin sangat nak tahu, sebab tahun baru Cina tu saya memang nak sangat pergi raya kat rumah jiran Cina saya tu.
Okay, so that short clip at the behind, that's not how we celebrate Chinese New Year. So actually that you can actually learn a lot easily. When you can just Google or just search around or just ask your friends. The Chinese New Year is not a religious festival. It's actually to celebrate the coming of spring, and that's why they have a feast they celebrate, because in ancient China, they are usually farming culture. So when it's time to sow the seeds, when spring is here, that's when you start to plant all the seeds, the rice seeds and stuff. So they have a feast, they celebrate, they reunion at the end of the winter, and then that's when they start doing their farming. So Chinese New Year is not religious. So I believe the Chinese, the non-Chinese, you can just join to celebrate. There will be certain parts that are religious, where they actually pray to the heavens to pray for a good harvest for the year. And nowadays we just pray for prosperity and health, and you can don't participate in that, because that's usually a closed door family thing. In terms of the general celebration, it's not very different from Hari Raya, Aidilfitri, but the only difference is that we are celebrating a new year, the lunar new year. So the lunar calendar is actually designed around the harvesting, the plantation of the rice and stuff like that. So it's not religious. You can go ahead.
Saya tak bagi saya peluang untuk belajar speak Chinese, and saya nak tanya, senang tak untuk belajar dalam bahasa Cina?
Okay, learning Chinese is extremely difficult. It's among one of the most difficult language to learn, if you're talking about reading and writing. But if you're talking about just speaking, I think it's not very different from any other languages. I think is extremely helpful for anyone within Southeast Asia or even around the world to learn Chinese, given the rise of China, and I think it will help greatly in your career, especially living in Malaysia. So you should go ahead and learn. Despite your family might be against it, but it's your life, China is not going to disappear.
Ada setengah Cina yang suka duduk bersendirian, yang tak nak campur tangan dengan orang luar. Orang luar kat sana tu kan kan suka bergaul.
Okay, so this is actually a cultural thing. You must understand the history of China, and you don't really have to read it like to understand really deeply. But as in, the general outline of Chinese history is war after war after war. People just die. You know, there's so many people, so death for a certain segment of population seems like nothing. So over the years, over the centuries, Chinese people become very conservative. We do not meddle with other people's problems, and we don't. That's probably why revolution in China is not easy, because we are usually very conservative. We are very careful, and we try to mind our own business. And then this is probably just built into our DNA as Chinese, that we try not to get into troubles of other people, because you do not know what that problem will lead to, especially in ancient China when there are still emperors. If you try to get involved with certain problems, you may accidentally offend certain powerful people, and you may just die, or they just disappear. And that's probably the reason. So it's a cultural thing. We Chinese people like to be quiet, especially when life is really hard. They just stay quiet, especially like the old people shown in the video. They just sit one corner and just think and vex about the problems. So Chinese people are not that sociable in that sense.
Saya nak tanya, kalau kata Chinese man dia tertarik pada Malay woman, apa kriteria yang boleh membuatkan orang tertarik tu? Kenapa?
Okay, so when it comes to Chinese guys are attracted to Malay girls. I think that's really common. I mean, because a lot of the Malay girls are really attractive. I don't think there's any problem or any difference between Chinese guys falling for Malay girls or towards any other races, or even the Chinese themselves. The main reason there isn't more Chinese Malay couples is mainly something to do with the religion, because in Islam you requires the guy or the girl to marry into the religion, and because Islam is a very special religion, a lot of Chinese, the families or themselves are very unwilling to become a Muslim. So usually that will be a deterring factor. So if not, I believe you'll probably see 10 times more of Chinese guys marrying Malay girls, or Chinese girls marrying a Malay guy. But despite that difficulty, it still happens. I still see friends, and I see people marrying into Islam. It's nothing special. Of course, it's a huge sacrifice for them if the family is against it. So all the more power to them.
Kenapa kalau saya baca mereka kata kalau yang tak kahwin tu mesti dapat ampau walaupun dia dah tua? Kenapa? Orang Melayu tak ada macam tu. Dah besar memang tak duit dah dia. Memang nak tanya. Curious guys. Saya je.
So during Chinese New Year, the rape package is given to not just children but anyone that is not married. So it's not about a gift or something from the elderly to the young. It's not that exactly. The traditional custom is actually to give to anyone who is not married. So even you are 35 years old, you're not married, you still get a rape packet. So probably that's a bit different from some of the other cultures where they also have this kind of ang pao kind of culture. The Malays, the Malay culture actually adopted this and give green packets. So they give it to the child. I think it's not a real difference, but it's mainly because whether you're married or you're not married. If you're not married, you'll get the ang pao. Although some people who are too old, they will reject the ang pao because they are shy to get it. And within the family, the matriarch, like the grandmother or the grandfather, will still give ang pao to their children despite they are married, because children.
Just curious, kenapa Chinese sangat-sangat suka makan babi?
Kenapa Cina suka sangat makan babi?
Sains ada buktikan bahawa dalam badan babi ada kuman yang takkan mati. But still, Chinese makan juga. Tak nak ke diorang stop makan babi. Take something else but not babi.
To not eat pork is a religious decision. It actually makes no sense, especially if you consider that if you take out religion totally, there's literally no reason not to eat pork, because it's another source of protein and meat, and scientifically it's actually proven that especially pig, the fatty part of the pig is actually one of the most nutritious food you can find on earth. And if you ask why we like to eat, or why we can't stop eating it, because it's tasty, it's really nice. Because I think in the video the ladies never eat pork before, so it's no wonder. It's just like someone who will say, the rabbit meat is really nice, or deer meat is really nice, or snake meat is really nice, or grasshoppers are nice to eat. I mean, I don't eat all these things. I never eat all these things before, except probably the deer meat. I wouldn't have understood, and I would say, why would anyone eat scorpions? So that's mainly the gist of the problem. In terms of the toxicity, I don't think it's an issue, because if you look at Chinese population, there is a lot of people who live a really long life. Although of course a lot of them, I think they eat really clean, and so like they are probably vegetarians or eat very little meat. But to us, even if there's any form of toxin in it, it wouldn't have made any difference, because any toxin will be defeated by the body's immune system. So otherwise, Chinese have been eating pork for centuries. It wouldn't have made any difference. Yep. So that's that. But of course, if you're Muslim, don't eat pork. Don't go against your religion. It's really harmful for your psyche, and for your social society, the social standings, and it'll get very confusing for you. It doesn't really matter to us. Yep. So that's my answer to the questions inside the Namewee's video. I hope it helped to bring some context. And it's really not that different. I think in terms of like, we're just all human beings. What defines us differently is actually we are of different, maybe like variants or subspecies of human beings, but generally speaking, the difference is more cultural. I don't think that makes us really different. We probably speak different languages, or our mother tongue is just different. And spend more time with the Chinese friends. Try to understand from their perspective. Be a bit more open-minded. I think you cannot apply the Islamic way of thinking, or and to apply on the Chinese, because most of the Chinese are actually, we're not very religious people. They are very religious Chinese, but they are they're religious in Christianity. Then there are some of them Buddhists. They are all very different people. So very different religions makes them views the world differently. So you cannot have a blanket statement of what Chinese people actually are. In fact, every Chinese community in different countries actually have very different realities. So in terms of understanding the general what is Chinese like, we are just really friendly people. We are mostly very non-religious. We like honorable people. We are loyal, and we always very grateful to people who help us before. These are the remnants of Confucianism, which is also not a religion, it's a philosophy. This is what defines Chinese people. So I hope this short video helps to shed some light on the Chinese from a Malay or Muslim perspective, and also be mindful of anyone or any political people trying to divide you and other races. I think it always has been really helpful to the politicians and to people with agenda to actually segregate, because it strengthens their support, because it's easier to think that you are the good people and you are the other group is the bad people. Don't fall for it. We are all just normal human beings. Everybody have family. We do our job. We try to earn money, just make a living. We're just trying to survive in this chaotic world. So don't let politics or religion to divide us. Yes, we don't believe in each other's religion. That's okay. We don't force our religion down other people's throat. And I believe that with just this, I think we all make very good friends. Focus on something that is more universal, like sports, and arts, music. Like everyone love K-pop. So that's my video for today.